Good morning, everybody. At 9:50 here on Live Impact News, we're going to stay on this health segment, if you will, because May is also National Stroke Awareness Month. And while nearly 80% of strokes are preventable, stroke remains one of the leading causes of death and long-term disability in the U.S. So joining us right now is Dr. Hunter Hewitt with Novant Health. Doctor, thanks for joining us this morning.
Of course, happy to be here.
Let's get to the basics first. We hear the phrase time is brain when it comes to stroke. What does that mean?
So, what we're referring to that is, first of all, when someone's having a stroke, they're losing about 1.9 million neurons, million brain cells every minute that they're not getting enough blood going to part of the brain. Luckily, in this day and age, we have some very new medications that can try to restore blood flow to the brain. And so when we say time is brain, what it really means is from the time someone's recognized to the time they can get into the hospital and be seen by a neurologist like me really matters, is it can really make a big difference in how much of their brain we're able to save.
All right, so what are the most common warning signs that we should know about?
So the big things we think about with stroke, and the more common one that people like, is something called B fast. So with B, any sudden onset loss of balance. E is any trouble with the eyes, loss of vision, or the eyes aren't moving correctly. Fast is face. All of a sudden you can have facial droop or weakness on one side. A is arm weakness, or weak on one side or the other. S is speech changes, either that your speech is slurred or that you can't talk. And T is time. It's just reiterating how important it is that if any of these symptoms are present, that you're seen and evaluated as soon as possible.
How about as far as symptoms? Are there some things that are overlooked that we might be taking less seriously?
The one in particular I see a lot is vision loss. Anything that's sudden onset, so a sudden onset vision loss, in particular just one eye vision loss, is still a stroke. I see it so often that people see it, they hope it gets better, they spend time, and unfortunately we're not able to try to help save their vision at that point.
All right, so and obviously time is of the essence. Walk us through what someone should do if they recognize some of these factors.
So the biggest thing, as soon as that you notice any of these things that look like it could be a stroke, calling 911. Because number one, it'll get you to the hospital faster. They can help provide support if needed on the way. And they've done good studies. By calling 911, you get seen by a neurologist and get seen and treated faster.
And then if they arrive at the ER as a stroke patient arrives, what happens? Walk us through that process.
So at first it gets very busy, and I know people can get scared of that at first, but generally what happens is we start moving as fast as we can to the CT scan to get a good picture of the brain to try to help figure out what's going on. And then you would meet a neurologist like me who would help talk about some of those options up front. One of the biggest ones being a potential clot buster to try to dissolve any clot and restore flow to the brain as soon as we can.
Okay. Any treatments that available now that can actually reverse the damage or minimize it at least?
The big thing is minimizing it and getting blood flow back to the brain as soon as we can. Because if the brain can get blood, the part that's at risk won't die and the symptoms will get better. So the clotbuster TNK is the biggest one we think about. The other big one we have now is a neurosurgical procedure where they actually physically pull out a clot. So especially for some of these more severe strokes, they can pull it out even up to 24 hours after. And it can be night and day the recovery that these patients can have.
Oh, wow. So, and we mentioned there at the top that strokes are preventable. So what can we do now to make sure we minimize any kind of risk?
The biggest three things that we talk about is diet, exercise, and seeing a doctor regularly. By being on a diet, particularly Mediterranean style diet, and what that means, it doesn't have to be Mediterranean food. Lots of fresh fruits, vegetables, whole grains. If you're going to eat meat, fish is the best. Less chicken if you can, and trying to stay away from red meat. Exercise at least 1 hour, 3 times a week, something that makes you break a sweat, gets your heart pumping, and seeing a doctor regularly so that way they can catch if you're starting to get high blood pressure, high cholesterol, so we can get those under control early.
And high blood pressure is one of those things, right, that attributes to the silent killer.
Mhm. Absolutely. High blood pressure, especially over years, can increase the risk both of ischemic stroke, lack of blood flow to the brain, as well as brain bleeds. And we also think of diabetes, especially if it's kind of gotten out of control, high cholesterol, and especially smoking are some of the biggest things we see causing strokes.
Are you seeing strokes in younger adults, and why could that be happening?
So it is true that the rate of stroke in young people are definitely going up. Part of it seems to be that there's also increased risk of stroke, of high blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, those same risk factors that it used to be. It wasn't until you were 60, 70 that those really became a problem or affecting people younger and younger. And the long-term risk of those, including stroke, are getting much more prevalent as well.
All right, so what do you want our viewers to know this morning that you wish every family knew about strokes?
The biggest things, number one, is to recognize some of those early signs. Again, that be fast, anything that's acute onset, and all of a sudden they're different, especially on one side or the other, is concerning. And most important is don't just wait and see if it gets better. Call 911 so that way we can see you quicker. And if it turns out it's not a stroke and I can send you home, all the better. But I just don't want to miss something that we can potentially help.
Dr. Hunter Hewitt with Novant Health, thank you so much for the information. Good stuff, as we are also recognizing it is Stroke Awareness Day. Appreciate your time.
Of course, have a good day. Thank you.
You too. Thanks. And we'll be right back here on Live Impact News.